I have a condition called arthrogryposis multiplex congenita, which basically means I was born with stiff joints and weak muscles. Because of this, I use a wheelchair to get around school. It helps me conserve energy and move more easily between classes. I'm in 7th grade now, and the school staff knows I'm supposed to leave each class about 5 minutes early. This gives me enough time to get to my next class before the halls get super crowded. So one day I was in band class, which is my first period. I got caught up in what we were doing and didn't realize it was time to leave. By the time I noticed, the bell had already rung. I talked to my band teacher about it, and we decided the best thing would be for me to wait in the cafeteria, which is right outside the band room, until the halls cleared out a bit. My band teacher told me he'd call my math teacher to let him know I'd be a few minutes late. I thanked him, feeling grateful for his understanding. He made the call and my math teacher was totally fine with it. So there I was, sitting in my wheelchair just inside the cafeteria, waiting for the crowd to thin out. That's when the head principal showed up. Let's just call him Mr. Principal. He came marching into the cafeteria, looking pretty angry. Mr. Principal yelled at me, demanding to know why I wasn't in class. I nervously explained that I hadn't been paying attention and the bell had rung before I left. This seemed to make him even angrier. I could tell he was about ready to give me detention. Mr. Principal scolded me, saying that wasn't a good reason to be sitting and waiting, and ordered me to go to class immediately. I was getting really stressed out. I'd never been in a situation like this before, and I didn't know what to do. Should I risk getting stuck in the halls, possibly getting run over, or running someone else over? Didn't Mr. Principal remember that he was supposed to be okay with me leaving early or arriving a bit late? I tried to explain that I had talked to my band teacher and we had decided it would be best for me to wait for the halls to clear. I mentioned that he had even messaged my math teacher, who had agreed with the plan. You could practically see steam coming out of Mr. Principal's ears at this point. Mr. Principal angrily declared that he didn't care what my teacher said and insisted that I needed to get to class right away. By this time, the second bell had rung, and class had already started. The halls were finally clearing out, and I was ready to go. I reminded Mr. Principal about a meeting we had a few months ago about what works best for me, where he had agreed it was fine if I'm a few minutes late to class sometimes. In response, Mr. Principal threatened me with in-school suspension if I didn't get to math class right away. Trying hard not to cry, I agreed to leave right away. But then, Mr. Principal contradicted himself, saying I couldn't go anywhere until he said so. I pointed out his contradiction, feeling frustrated and confused. I was so upset I could barely think straight. Part of me wanted to ram into him with my wheelchair, but I knew that would only make things worse. Mr. Principal then tried to backtrack, saying he was still talking to me and blamed me for not paying attention to the time. I attempted to reason with him, saying that everyone makes mistakes and gets behind sometimes. Finally, Mr. Principal let me go to class, but not before warning me that I'd be in big trouble if he ever saw me sitting in the halls waiting again. So I finally made it to math class. My math teacher was super understanding when I got there. He welcomed me, acknowledging that he knew I'd be a little late but suggested we talk after class since I'd missed about 10 minutes. I agreed, feeling relieved at his understanding. I sat through the lesson, and when it was time to work on our assignment, my math teacher called me over. He asked why I was so late, mentioning that he knew I'd be a few minutes behind but was surprised by how long it took. I explained the situation with Mr. Principal, telling him how the principal had seen me waiting in the cafeteria and wasn't happy about it. My math teacher expressed sympathy and understanding, clearly upset about what had happened. I could tell he was really bothered by the situation. Over the next few days, I found out he had gotten together with some of the other teachers. They reported Mr. Principal for how he had been treating both teachers and students. It turns out I wasn't the only one he'd been given a hard time. A couple of weeks later, we all found out that the Board of Education had decided to fire Mr. Principal. One of the assistant principals took over his job, and guess what? They hired my math teacher as one of the new assistant principals. I was so relieved that Mr. Principal was gone. It turned out that pretty much nobody at the school had liked him. Ever since then, things have been much better at school. The new principal and assistant principals actually listen to us and try to understand our situations. They work with us to find solutions instead of just yelling and threatening punishment. I still leave class a little early sometimes, but now I don't have to worry about getting in trouble for it. It's nice to feel like the people in charge actually care about making school work for everyone, not just making everyone follow the rules no matter what. I've always been a small town girl, born and raised in this little place where everyone knows your name and your business. It's the kind of town where you can't sneeze without someone offering you a tissue from 3 streets away. I'm 18 now, but I've been working at our local bakery since I was 16. Our bakery isn't just a place for fresh bread and pastries, it's a community hub. On any given day, you'll see sweet old couples sharing a scone, kids excitedly picking out treats, and the local gossip mill churning faster than our mixers. I've grown up here, watched faces age, and seen new ones arrive. It's home. When the pandemic hit, everything changed. Our sleepy town suddenly felt like it was holding its breath. The bakery, being an essential business, stayed open. We adapted, wore masks, and tried to keep some sense of normalcy in a world gone mad. That one day started like any other during those strange times. I'd been called in for an extra shift because we were short-staffed. Money's money, so I didn't mind. Plus, it gave me something to do other than stare at my bedroom walls. The morning rush was in full swing. Builders were lining up for their bacon baps, and we were running low on everything. My boss, a no-nonsense woman who could probably run the country if she put her mind to it, sent me on a butter run to the shop next door. I quickly agreed to my boss's request, showing my readiness to help out. I took off my apron, grabbed some cash from the till, and headed out. The shop next door was our lifeline for last-minute supplies. I ducked in, grabbed the butter, and was out in a flash. That's when things got interesting. As I approached the bakery door, this woman appeared out of nowhere. She stuck her foot out, blocking my path. I could feel my anxiety rising. Close contact with strangers during a pandemic? Not my idea of fun. The woman cleared her throat loudly to get my attention. I responded, asking what she wanted. The woman then rudely told me that only 2 customers were allowed at a time and claimed she was there first. I looked down at myself. Black trousers, black shirt, trainers, and my hoodie. Okay, I get it. I didn't look like I worked there. I tried to explain that I understood the 2-person rule but was attempting to do something. The woman interrupted, stubbornly repeating that she was there first. I tried to sidestep her, but she moved closer to the door. My anxiety was going through the roof. I stepped back, trying to keep my distance from her unmasked face. Through the window, I could see my boss dealing with a mum and her screaming child, plus a builder. She hadn't noticed the standoff outside. I decided to wait it out. As soon as the second customer left, I darted inside and quickly put my apron back on. The woman followed, practically steaming from her ears. I greeted her politely, asking how I could help her today. Pure confusion mixed with indignation. I then called out to my boss, asking if she wanted me to deliver a customer's bread on my way home from work. My boss replied affirmatively. I turned back to the woman, ready to take her order, but she just stood there, mouth opening and closing like a fish out of water. After a moment, she turned on her heel and stormed out without buying anything. Once she was gone, I filled my boss in on what happened. I explained the situation to my boss, describing how I was standing outside with butter when the woman thought I was trying to cut in line. My boss responded, saying she had noticed the standoff and complimented me on keeping my cool. I thanked her and joked that it was all part of the small-town bakery experience. We shared a laugh, and the day went on. But that moment stuck with me. University might be on the horizon, but for now, I was content being the bakery girl. Small-town life might not be exciting, but it sure has its moments. At 25, I'd been living away from home since college, but I still talk to my parents every week. They were so excited when they told me about the empty lot they'd bought in New Orleans to build their perfect house. Things started going sideways when they had to cut down a big oak tree on the property. It was beautiful, but it had to go for the construction to start. That's when we met our neighbor from hell, Karen. Dad tried to introduce himself to her one day. He's always been friendly, you know? He approached Karen, warmly introducing himself and his wife as the new neighbors, and politely asked for her name. Karen's response was far from friendly. She rudely told him that her name was none of his business and refused to shake his hand, citing COVID as an excuse. Then she angrily accused them of ruining her life by cutting down her tree, telling them they should be ashamed of themselves. Dad was shocked. He tried to point out that Karen already had a big oak in her backyard, but she just stormed off. We never figured out why she thought our tree was hers. From then on, it was constant trouble. Karen complained about everything. One time, she threatened to call the police because the construction was too loud in the middle of the day. Another time, she said she'd report the construction company for using illegal immigrants and get the whole project shut down. The company owner had to threaten her with a lawsuit to make her back off. She even tried to get my parents' car towed when they parked by their own unfinished house. The tow truck driver saw where the car was and told Karen he'd bill her if she wasted his time again. It went on and on. Karen did everything she could to mess things up. But finally the house was done and my parents moved in after the holidays. Mom caught Karen watching them bitterly from her window as they moved boxes in. We thought it might never end, but then Mother Nature stepped in. During some bad winter storms, the oak tree in Karen's backyard fell over. It missed her house but crushed her new Jaguar. Mom told me what happened the next morning. She described hearing an awful scream and running outside to see Karen staring at what was left of her car, looking like she was about to explode. Karen had to pay for the tree removal, the car towing, and a rental car. It must have been the last straw because she put her house up for sale and moved out soon after. My dad later told me how they watched Karen drive away from their front porch, noting that he'd never seen the neighbors look so happy. Mom admitted feeling a little bad for Karen, but acknowledged that after everything they'd been through, it was hard not to see it as karma. Dad then suggested they could finally enjoy their new home in peace and proposed having a neighborhood barbecue to celebrate. And that's exactly what they did. The whole street showed up and everyone had a great time. My parents finally got to enjoy their dream home and the neighborhood got rid of its nightmare neighbor. My older sister decided one day to throw herself the most extravagant 40th birthday party you could imagine. She was always the center of attention in our family, constantly demanding the spotlight and throwing tantrums when she didn't get her way. Our parents indulged her every whim, which only fueled her sense of entitlement. As we grew older, I hoped she'd mature and grow out of it, but it only seemed to get worse. When the invitation for her 40th birthday party arrived in the mail, I knew it was going to be over the top. The envelope was lined with gold foil, and inside was a handwritten note detailing her gift expectations. She had the audacity to request a diamond tiara from me, claiming it was the least I could do as her sister. The day of the party arrived and I found myself standing outside a lavish mansion she had rented for the occasion. Guests were streaming in, all carrying expensive-looking gifts. I took a deep breath and walked inside, clutching the gift I had spent weeks making, a scrapbook filled with memories of our childhood and family photos. When I entered the grand foyer, I saw my sister holding court in the center of the room. She was wearing a sparkling gown that probably cost more than my car, and a crown perched atop her perfectly coiffed hair. Her husband stood beside her looking exhausted and a bit overwhelmed. My sister immediately noticed me and asked about the tiara she had demanded. When I explained that I had made her something special instead, she didn't even bother to look at the scrapbook I was holding out. She seemed shocked that I hadn't bought the diamond tiara she requested and accused me of not being able to afford it. I tried to explain that I thought a handmade gift would be more meaningful, but she cut me off. She scoffed at the idea of sentimentality, saying she couldn't wear memories to her next gala. Her voice was getting louder, and she accused me of being selfish on her birthday. As people around us started to stare, I tried to defend my gift, explaining the thought and effort I had put into it. My sister, however, insisted it was all about the money. She boasted about how much she had spent on the party and how much her husband had spent on her gifts. She then turned to her husband, demanding he tell me what he had gotten her. He reluctantly admitted to buying her a yacht, which left me stunned. My sister used this as further proof of how people should show they care, dismissing my handmade gift as a cheap crafts project. In a fit of anger, she grabbed the scrapbook from my hands and tossed it onto a nearby table, knocking over a vase in the process. She then shocked everyone by declaring the party ruined and demanding that all the guests leave immediately. When the room fell silent and guests looked around in confusion, she repeated her demand more forcefully, accusing everyone of ruining her special day with pathetic gifts and a lack of appreciation. As people began to file out, I stood there, stunned by her behavior. I tried to reason with her, pointing out that these people had come to celebrate with her, but she dismissed this, claiming they had only come to disappoint her. She then announced her plan to throw another party the following weekend, insisting that this time guests should bring gifts worthy of her. A few days later, I received another invitation demanding that all guests bring double the gifts to make up for their failure. When I called to talk some sense into her, she was already planning her revenge. She threatened to sue guests who didn't show up with appropriate gifts for emotional distress. I tried to explain that she couldn't sue people for not buying expensive gifts, but she was convinced she could and that she deserved compensation for the trauma they had caused. Realizing there was no reasoning with her, I hung up. Over the next few weeks, I heard from friends and family who had received threatening letters from a lawyer my sister had apparently hired. It was also absurd that at first no one took it seriously, but then something unexpected happened. One of the guests she threatened turned out to be a judge. He didn't take kindly to being bullied and decided to teach my sister a lesson. He reported her lawyer for unethical practices, which led to an investigation. As it turned out, my sister had been living well beyond her means for years. The mansion, the yacht, even the lawyer, it was all funded through credit cards and loans she had no way of repaying. The investigation uncovered a web of financial fraud that she and her husband had been orchestrating for years. In the end, karma caught up with her in the most spectacular way. Instead of celebrating her 40th year in luxury, she found herself facing legal troubles, mountains of debt, and the collapse of her carefully crafted image of wealth and importance. As for me, I kept that scrapbook. Maybe one day when she's learned her lesson, I'll give it to her.